This is Generation Stadia, giving you that daily dose of everything and anything cloud gaming related, and today we're going to be talking about Watch Dogs Legion. I've spent my weekend playing it, and I'm here to give you my first impressions and overview of the game and whether or not you should buy it. This was a pretty big release for Google Stadia, considering it's the first open world sandbox game of its kind on Stadia that's been released day and date. That said, there are some pretty big issues here worth noting, and they may have an effect on whether or not you decide to buy the game, so let's get right into it by discussing the gameplay. Let me begin by discussing the good. And the most prominent thing here is that Watch Dogs Legion controls considerably better than Watch Dogs 2 or the previous entry before it. Both on-foot traversal and vehicle handling have been much improved. In my personal opinion, Watch Dogs 2 and 1 both had some of the worst driving in an open world sandbox game I've ever played. And when you consider the fact that driving from point A to B makes up for more than 50% of these types of games, that was a huge issue. So I'm more than happy to report that I have no complaints on that side of things. The on-foot traversal, on the other hand, does require some in-game tweaks before it feels fluid. You're gonna want to go into your settings and then your gamepad settings and scroll all the way down to on-foot sensitivity. Now for some reason this setting is set at 0% by default and I'm not sure why. Crank that all the way up to 100 and it feels so much better. Now on the gunplay side of things, it feels very much the same as GTA. Heavy aim assist is here, and you may even see me abuse it a bit in the gameplay in the background. As long as you're staring at their general direction, it will snap right onto the target and make for an easy shot. Now myself, I don't mind this style of gunplay, I think it works for open world sandbox games, but I do know there are some people out there who dislike GTA style of gunplay, and it's very much the same here. That said, we are talking about Watch Dogs here, so gunplay isn't the only thing that matters, and it's not the only option you have for approaching a situation. You can play much more stealth-like and actually hack cameras to disable or arm traps and get through a situation without ever having to shoot a gun. And what they have in place here works really well, but I can't help but feel it's a bit toned back from Watch Dogs 2. The amount of mayhem you could cause with hacking stuff in the previous game was pretty insane and one of the funner things about the game itself. In Legion, the hacking seems to take a much more focused approach on the overall objective, but that is kind of a bad thing for the sandbox experience. But it is worth pointing out that whatever is there for hacking in Legion does work really well. But now let me talk about the bad aspect of the gameplay, and ultimately, it's really just one major flaw. To put it simply, the optimization on the Stadia version of the game is bad. Just take a look for yourself. The game dips well below 30 on countless occasions. Even worse, I've had it happen on separate occasions where the game starts dipping consistently below 30 and it stays that way until I start up a new game. And when I say start up a new game, I mean shut down the Stadia instance and reload my save on a new instance. I'm not exactly sure what causes this, as it's the only game on Stadia to ever give me this issue, and yes, for those wondering, I am running on a hardwired connection, and my connection status on Stadia is rated as excellent throughout. Now, to be perfectly fair to the Stadia version of the game, this title in general seems to have fairly poor optimization across the board. Whether you're playing on an Xbox, PlayStation, or PC, the optimization has room for improvement. But that does not change the fact that it's an issue here and now, and I really do hope that they fix and address this fairly quickly. As of right now, I find it pretty hard to recommend this game alone simply because of it, and I'm hoping that it gets fixed pretty soon. But now let me talk a bit about the visuals, because graphically the game looks beautiful. The city of London looks fantastic and it scales beautifully, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these assets were being reused and brushed up from Assassin's Creed Syndicate. And that's not a knock on the game. Assassin's Creed's environments are some of the best out there, and Watch Dogs Legion stands toe to toe with it. The city feels very alive, and when it's nighttime, it looks even better. I also have to give them credit for doing a great job when it comes to the character designs as well as vehicles, because they do look futuristic but also grounded. Now, one thing I did notice and will mention is that during the daytime, if you're going around driving, you may see some sort of pixelation in the far end. It seems to be artifacts from the streaming nature of this version of the game, but honestly, it's really not that big of a deal and doesn't impact gameplay at all. Now let me discuss the story just a bit, because I do think this is one of the bigger downfalls that Watch Dogs Legion currently has. There is an overall narrative to the game, but it doesn't feel as refined or easy to get attached to as the previous entries. And the main culprit behind this has to be the fact that you can play as any NPC in the world. Right out of the gate, I chose my NPC to start, and the face and voice just did not match whatsoever. If I'm being completely honest, it made taking the story seriously pretty hard to do. And while yes, you always have the option of recruiting someone else and then playing as them, you can always tell that they're a randomly generated NPC. While Watch Dogs 2 definitely had its issues with the storyline, it at least had a cast of memorable characters. Watch Dogs Legion, on the other hand, well, the only memorable character I actually care for is Bagley, who's an advanced AI who helps you throughout the missions. The rest of it just kind of feels a little flat. That said, I am only about 10 hours into the game, so take that as you will. So to wrap all of this up, overall, do I think the game is good? Well, honestly, I think it's okay. It's not a bad game by any means, it just doesn't really feel all that special or unique. It's what I would call a good game, but not a great one. The gameplay is good, the visuals are great, and the story is just okay. Under most circumstances, I would say it's a pretty safe recommend, especially if you're craving an open world sandbox style game on Stadia, but I can't just ignore all the frame rate issues I've experienced so far, and that prevents me from being able to fully recommend this title. If you don't mind dealing with these issues, then go ahead and pick it up, but if you do, then I would wait for a patch or some sort of fix to address the issue. I have little to no doubt that Ubisoft will fix some of these issues, by the way, especially with their multiplayer update that is due out in December. But ultimately, for now, I'd say hold off until we see some of those fixes in play, unless you really can't wait to play a game like this on Stadia, in which case go for it. There's a solid foundation underneath for Ubisoft to build upon with its online component, and I'm pretty hopeful for that to happen. Not to mention, I'm really excited for the DLC, as I can imagine the storyline of those being much more solid. Either way, that's all I have to say about the game so far, but be sure to stay tuned to the channel, as I'll be sure to update and even revisit my impressions of the game once a few patches or fixes are out. And you can be assured that I will make a video once the multiplayer is out, giving you my first impressions of Watch Dogs Legion online. Now, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful at all, be sure to hit that like button, as it really does help the channel out, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Today's end of video question is going to be asking you for your opinion of Watch Dogs Legion so far. Are you happy with the Stadia port of the game? Would you recommend it to others? And what do you think they could fix or add to make it even better? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to your replies. As always, thank you for watching the video. This has been Generation Stadia, giving you that daily dose of everything and anything cloud gaming related. The Gen S community is over 5,200 strong and growing by the day, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.